But first, the latest on our top story. President Trump is using this weekend to narrow his choices of Supreme Court picks. CBS News has learned there are two leading contenders. The first is Brett Kavanaugh, a 53-year-old circuit court judge in Washington. The other, Amy Coney Barrett, a 46-year-old who the president recently appointed to the 7th Circuit in Chicago.
The president left Washington on Friday to spend the weekend at his New Jersey resort. Aboard Air Force One, Mr. Trump said he will announce his nominee 1 week from this Monday. He told reporters that he'll be interviewing several candidates over the coming days.
The president also told reporters he plans to bring up Russia's interference in the 2016 election when he meets Vladimir Putin for a summit in Finland a little more than 2 weeks from now. Some say the meeting holds the promise for better relations between the two nations. Others fear that Mr. Trump may embolden Putin and could drive a wedge between the U.S. and its European allies. Here to discuss the summit is Kimberly Marten, professor of political science at Barnard College, Columbia University. Kimberly, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me back.
Thanks for coming back. So in this meeting between the two, Trump or Putin, does one of them hold the advantage here in diplomatic relations?
No question Putin does, because he's a very clever man. Cleverness and trying to get advantage over your opponent is something that's really valued in Russian political culture. And I mean, he's been in that position for so long and he's accomplished so much internationally. Whereas we know that Trump kind of got taken advantage of in his recent summit in North Korea. He didn't seem to get much out of Kim Jong-un.
Even if he doesn't see it that way.
Yeah, he doesn't see it that way. But really, the United States didn't get North Korea to change much of its behavior, but the U.S. gave up military exercises with South Korea for right now.
The president says he will delve into Russian meddling. It's a topic that has been off limits for him for some time. The White House also said so. But if Russia denies it, is that just good enough? Where do you go from there?
It's not clear that the summit itself can actually accomplish much on that. And we have to remember that Obama had brought up the election meddling with Putin back in September of 2016. And it did no good whatsoever, because a month later, what did the Russians do? They released those Podesta emails just at a really crucial time when Trump had been accused of or had admitted that he had been engaged in some behavior that didn't make him look too savory with women. And the timing of that indicates it was a Russian ploy, and so what Obama had said a month earlier did nothing to stop Russians from doing that.
Kimberly, the president has said that no one's been tougher on Russia than he has, his presidency. But I think back to President Kennedy blockading the Soviets. I think back to Jimmy Carter boycotting the Olympics, Ronald Reagan tear down this wall. Fact check the president on that. Has he been tougher than any other president in U.S. history? And I understand that the Soviet Union was a different country.
He probably hasn't been tougher than all of the people that you mentioned. But I think if you look at the actual policies that Washington has put into place, we've got more troops now deployed in Europe than we had earlier. We've increased our spending on NATO-related military purchases. The sanctions have been very strong against Russia. It's not clear that they're really accomplishing anything in getting Russia to change its behavior. And it hasn't really come so much from Trump as an individual. A lot of it has come from pressure that's coming from the Senate and then from Trump's own advisors, who have not really been all that pro-Russian.
Obviously, Syria will also be on the table in this summit. There's been some discussion that perhaps Russia and the U.S. can work together in at least getting Iranian troops out of Syria, some of that presence. What can be done in regards to Syria and these two countries?
Well, it's really complicated, and there's some dangers about putting that forward as an idea, because then the question is, what would Putin get in return? Because Iran is really a Russian ally. Russia gets a lot of benefit out of what Iran is doing in Syria, because it means that Russia doesn't have to be doing even more. And so if Putin says, OK, we'll try to ease the Iranians out of Syria, then the question is, what does the U.S. have to give up in response? And of course, President Trump has been talking about wanting to pull all U.S. forces out of Syria. And if that happens, our Kurdish allies that are located in the east might be left with no support. And that would not be, sort of a good reputational thing going forward.
And again, as we know, this is coming on the heels, this Helsinki visit, on the heels of the NATO summit.
Yes.
So.
And I mean, Trump just in the last couple days has been saying more anti-NATO stuff again, talking about people not giving enough money, talking about how, maybe we're not sure that NATO's that good. It might be as bad as NAFTA, in his words. And so the optics of that could be kind of bad. But again, I think, Senate support, the support of Trump's advisors, I don't think the U.S. is going to desert NATO anytime soon.
All right, Kimberly Marten, we thank you.
Thank you for having me here.